for joining us today. And if you are just now hearing about coffee and Chaturangas, I encourage you to go back to maybe the first episode and kind of see what this is all about. It's really yoga infused, and I wanted to introduce y'all to Megan, those of y'all that might not know her. Those of y'all that do know her probably understand why I wanted to introduce the world to Megan. She has energy that we wish we would have like a snippet of. And one of the things I think is really, really important as a yoga teacher is that we find our style. And you can't just find your style overnight. That goes for anything. And it's something that evolves and it's ever changing because our lives change. And Megan has a really unique style of teaching that, you pretty much fall in love with Megan when you meet her, when you take her class. So I wanted to bring her and for y'all to meet her and just have this conversation, really hear about how she started her yoga practice and what inspired her to become a yoga teacher, and especially her style, however you want to share.
Okay, well, I started practicing yoga seriously when I moved to Dallas in 2011. Before that, we were forced against our will to take yoga classes and different summer intensives, things I had done in the ballet world. It was always super slow and boring. We would fall asleep. We didn't see a whole lot of a benefit in it when we were 11 and 12 and wanting to be dancing on our toes all the time. But I sustained a pretty serious ankle injury in 2008, about 6 weeks before Nutcracker.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's funny how those things happen. It's like one moment, this is your life, and then the next time you don't ever dance in the Nutcracker again. But I ended up taking a job in Dallas, just needed a change, moved from Austin after about 8 years there, and there was a yoga studio called Uptown Yoga. I was living in Uptown Dallas, and it was at the end of my block. So I decided to go check out a class because I knew it was good for me, and I needed, I'm not a gym rat. I don't like running. I don't want to run any further than across the stage. So working out is just not that fun for me. So I decided to give it another shot. Mm-hmm. And it was a vinyasa flow class. It was heated. And I walked in thinking, okay, I'm a dancer. I'm going to kick everybody's ass here. And I could not hold my hairdryer up. I couldn't, for like a week, I could not open doors. I was having to, just shove myself into them because my arms were so tired. It was just a really, really humbling experience. But that one class, I don't even remember who was teaching. I completely fell in love. They had a great schedule starting at 6 a.m. The last class was at 8 p.m. every day. So that was probably in December of 2011. So in January, I usually do an entire month of detox, and just to kind of start the year in a fresh way. And so I added yoga. I decided to do it every single day, and never really looked back. I've been teaching movement ballet for well over a decade now, and so after I began practicing yoga, pretty seriously, it was just a natural progression, into teaching. So I started my teacher training and at Lotus Yoga Dallas. It was right next to my dance studio, so it was very convenient. I could go take class there on my lunch break, and then, the way that they did the program was really neat. They kind of cater to everyone's schedule, so my yoga training was for X amount of hours every Thursday morning, 3 weeks on, 1 week off over the course of several months. So, yeah, that's how I got into it.
Do you feel that ballet is infused with your yoga, or yoga infused with your ballet? Like, how does that, I don't use the word cross-train, but how do they work with each other for you?
Well, for ballet, definitely it is cross-training. I definitely recommend it for all dancers. You're building a lot of, especially in ballet, we're externally rotated. So there are huge, huge imbalances in a ballet dancer's body. So even now, like working in more parallel positions is a really huge struggle for me, even after years of practicing. Plus the added core. We do a lot of Pilates and dance. But yeah, I definitely find a lot of the things that I've learned about anatomy and breathing and integrate that into my dance classes. The philosophy is hard just because dance is very competitive and you do kind of have to push through. Like if you're tired and you don't feel great, it doesn't really matter. Like, oh, your toes are bleeding, like the show goes on. So it's been really interesting to find the polar opposite in yoga. You know, if things aren't feeling great, I'm always telling people not to do them. So that's been really therapeutic for me, I guess, personally, as far as crossing over or integrating dance into yoga. I think that it is very, very much evident in my sequencing. As a dancer, we're taught to use the full space. You don't want to go see a dancer and watch them dance around themselves in circles in like one little spot on the stage. So the mat's kind of like that. I mean, it's not a stage per se, but it's your space. And so I like to utilize that fully. So a lot of times you'll find yourself facing one direction and then another one and then twisting back. And then, yeah, a lot of the movement is really connected. It's not necessarily always very fast, but it is definitely consistently. You're moving pretty consistently throughout the class. So.
And you started with your ankle injury. So how do you feel now? Is that something that every once in a while bothers you? And do you find that you still modify for your practice? How has it helped you?
Well, I haven't had to modify so much for my ankle. It's actually helped a whole lot. I tore the anterior and posterior capsule of my right ankle. So now, like if I'm on it too frequently, any jumping, any running, it will blow up like a little balloon. It looks like a little grapefruit. Even now, there's a lot of scar tissue. But things like down dog, you know, the stretching of the Achilles tendon, that's been really, really helpful. So the fact that there is no bouncing is really, really great for that injury. Of course, I've stumbled upon lots of other injuries as a result, you know, of those imbalances. Like dancers, we're not known for being super strong in the upper body department. So, you know, really, really practicing very consistently, that was a lot. You know, I found myself with wrist injuries and shoulder injuries, and I still kind of move through those as I work to strengthen, I guess. Just, I guess, overuse sometimes, and you don't realize that you're doing it, which is, so you end up having to modify and back off a lot of the times.
Yeah, and modify, back off. In the midst of like healing and rehab type of thing, you build different kind of strength.
Absolutely.
And it can be really hard up here to know you have to back off of something.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been living on forearm variation things for a while and not down dog with the shoulder stuff that I have going on. And it's very humbling.
Yeah.
And as a teacher, I think it really helps too, because even though we know these are the modifications, when we teach and we help others, if we don't experience it ourselves, that compassion isn't there.
Right.
You know, that's a lot of times why I shed a tear on my mat, because I just get so pissed off that I can't do this, one simple thing and I can straighten my arm.
Yeah.
And if we have that compassion, we can build that into our teaching.
Right. Well, yeah, and a lot of that is just being patient. It can be really frustrating when you know that your body is capable of doing something, or, you know, I like arm balances, I like being on my hands, and so, you know, this last spring, you know, I was out for several months with this wrist injury, and, you know, even when it did heal eventually, you know, I still have to watch it, especially when rebuilding that strength. You can't just jump back into it. They have a saying in dance that if you miss one class, your body feels it. If you miss 2 classes, your partner feels it. If you miss 3 classes, the entire audience feels it. And it's the same way for your yoga practice. You know, when you're practicing consistently, your body becomes really conditioned, and so when you have to take time off, you have to practice a lot of patience, because you don't get to jump back in at the same place you left off, because you've lost that strength, the stamina, the flexibility, and you really have to take the time to rebuild that, because otherwise you end up out with something else.
Yeah.
But, you know, due to overcompensating in other areas. So. Yeah.
What you think is weak, what you think is strong, and they really just need to start working together congruently. It takes a while.
It does. It does indeed.
So I think you have a really, really unique teaching style. You know, a lot of times we just use the word vinyasa across the board, and I feel like your class is so much more than just that word. How important is it to you to have what you have built right now for yourself, and how comfortable you feel teaching the specific style that you teach? Because I feel like you've evolved from when you originally became a yoga teacher.
Absolutely. I was trained in more of just the basic hatha style, and as a mover, that was a little bit slow for me, you know? And the second studio that I started teaching at is this really amazing studio in Dallas as well, and they're like super hardcore. So it's an Ashtanga based. Well, not all of it, but some of the classes were very, very intense, very, very physical, as is the Ashtanga practice. It's definitely not a style for everyone. I mean, it can be very intense. And so that, you know, teaching there, not only did I move into more interest in the philosophies, because they integrated a lot of the yamas and niyamas into class, and all of the Sanskrit. If you've ever been in my class, I use a lot of the original terminology, the Indian Sanskrit, and as well as the English, because most of us do not speak Sanskrit.
And you pronounce it very, very well. You articulate very well.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I like language. You know, ballet is all French. This is all Sanskrit, so it's interesting. I can't choose a profession that has English as the first language, and neither one of them are very useful in the United States either. Go figure. Couldn't be in Spanish or something. But yeah, so I started out with this really, really slow training, and then got kind of thrown into this very intense, high energy, very quickly moving practice, and learning to teach that, because that was that studio style, and I loved it. A lot of times I couldn't make it through the whole class, and they were usually about an hour, 15 minutes, and in the last, 40 minutes, I was just kind of like, holy shit, I really wish I was not here right now, because it was so hot and so physically demanding. But it was just so beautiful. It's the practice. I mean, there were times that I would just like sit on my mat and watch these really just strong, fluid yogis. It was like a dance, and just like moving safely through all of these poses, and it was very, very inspiring. So when I got here, that was my major influence, and I feel like I've really toned it down since I first arrived. I don't feel that pressure. The nice thing about teaching in Little Rock, like at Barefoot and the other studios that I've been a part of, I get a lot of creative freedom. Nobody says like, this is the style that we want you to teach. It's just kind of like, okay, don't hurt anyone, have fun, like, go. So I'm finding that it's, like, while I'm definitely still leading a vinyasa flow practice, it's a lot slower, it's a lot less intense, a lot of modifications. There are a lot of different levels of yogis here, and it's been fun. It's been fun to introduce more of some of the more Western poses that a lot of people were not super familiar with when I got here. So that's been fun to watch the yogis really change and evolve in their practice as well. You know, the same way that we're really focused on alignment and not getting hurt. There were a lot of really, you know, you guys have built this really strong community. There are a lot of really strong yogis. And so, you know, just encouraging them to play and just saying like, oh yeah, you fell out of half moon, like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, nobody cares. Because nobody does care.
No.
And it's fun. Sometimes it's fun to do some of like the flashy, like crazy, twisty stuff, like just to see if you can. It's not an integral part of my practice personally. It definitely doesn't, you know, define the success of that. But again,
it's just playful.
Yeah,
simply.
It's fun. It's interesting. It kind of breaks things up, shakes it up a little bit. So, yeah.
That's fun to do.
It is. I think so. And I mean, moving is joyful for me. I dance obviously, and so that, and yoga as well. You get to move and shake and sweat and cry and laugh and fall off of your mat and kick people when you're in down dog and high five and
Little foot
wild
high five.
things. Oh yeah, so it's
And you do have the most energetic dog.
yeah.
So I mean that goes along with your whole life is
man.
energy.
Yeah, he has all of the energy. He does. Yes, Mr. Darcy is currently taking a nap. I'll be feeling that nap later when he is
He's building up for you.
I know, yeah. My arm will be very sad when we get to the dog park. All of the frisbee throwing.
So you said your breakfast was coffee.
Yes.
What's your favorite coffee? How do you fix it?
At home, I don't even own a coffee maker. I have a French press and an electric kettle. So I am definitely a dark roast girl with cashew milk or coconut milk and honey.
You're serious. French press is serious.
I don't mess around. I don't mess around. If I go to Starbucks, if I'm going to do like the frou-frou drinks, it's always like a coconut dirty chai.
Dirty.
Yep. Yeah, I have that shot of espresso to kind of balance the sugars.
Woo!
Yeah.
Why, thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And y'all check out the schedule. Come try any of the classes. Make sure you check out Megan's. Can we cheers?
Yay, I have water to offset all of this morning's coffee.
Have a happy day, y'all.